All right. Happy Friday, everybody. We're here with another live today. And today I'm talking with Marcelle Waldman. She is the founder of Feellinks. And I'm going to actually let Marcelle tell you a little bit about herself, about her company, and how she started it. And then we're going to ask her some questions about how to deal with feelings as we head back to school. How are you, Marcelle?
I'm doing actually fantastic this morning, or I guess almost afternoon, but I'm excited to be here with you. And I love that, gosh, just connecting with people across the United States is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Certainly. So let's see. I am from the Seattle area. I grew up in a little small town on an island, actually. And after, just taking off, I went to college and I got my education degree down at the University of Arizona, where I got to meet my lovely husband. And we moved back to Washington and we live in a beautiful little mountainous area here, another small town. But when I moved back from college, I actually ended up teaching in the very district that I grew up in. And I got to teach our littlest. Yeah. So I taught kindergarten for a long time. And then I had two of my own kiddos and found that balancing kid life and full-time work life was a little bit much. So I ended up substituting for a little bit. And then I went on to teach my son, who's my youngest, at the preschool level. So I got to get into preschool. I taught the threes class, the pre-K class, kind of directed the preschool. And then went back when he went into kindergarten. I went back and decided to go on the other side of things and got on the PTA board and did some vice president position and president for a couple of years. And then just this last year, I was able to launch my newest little small business called Feellinks. And just a quick bit about Feellinks. It is a social emotional kind of resource for young kids. And it really came out of my passion from teaching and teaching our youngest learners and knowing how important our social emotional skills are for our life. And so it's a set of these little plush feeling dolls. So here's they're double-sided. So there's 4 dolls. They're super soft. They have little emotion faces on them. They have their little touch points of their head, their heart, and their belly of where we feel emotion. So this is embarrassed and proud. And so there's 4 dolls. And then there's also a journal. So there's a lay flat journal, a nice way for a kiddo to draw and reflect on feelings, being able to express themselves. So this really all came out of just tried and true things I was doing as a teacher and really wanted to produce something that was tangible and usable by families, schools, counselors, and so on. So that is a bit about me. And now I have a 9 and 11-year-old. So time moves quickly, as we were talking about.
Yeah, we were talking about your daughter going into middle school.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that big transition. And so that leads us perfectly into this emotion piece, because I'm sure, especially moving into a new grade, a new school, there are some big emotions that come up for our kids as we're heading back to school. So whether we're heading back in person or virtually or homeschool, how often do you suggest that we check in with our kids about their feelings, and how would you say we should go about that?
So I think we need to think of it as kind of like scaffolding, depending on what age our children are, how much of that kind of emotional intelligence, which is kind of the big buzzword that goes with kind of what I created, right? How much do our children know about their own feelings? So dependent upon their age, depends on how you're going to ask them about their feelings, how you're going to teach them about feelings. So Our littlest ones, maybe they are just working on kind of those core feelings of like happy and sad and mad, So asking, are you feeling happy today? So really being able to kind of lead them or ask questions that are leading that open up some more discussion. Then kind of a little bit older, maybe you're just asking things like, how are you feeling this morning? Or how are you feeling about going back to school? What are you most, again, a little bit leading, but like, what are you most excited for? Or what are you most worried about? And maybe they're not worried about anything, right? So, and maybe you as a parent or a caretaker are feeling some things that your child is not expressing. And that's okay, because they are feeling what they're telling you in their ability to express it, right? So maybe that your child is feeling worried, but they're not necessarily saying that to you. So there are other ways to kind of have those conversations, use tools like drawing out how you're feeling, right? Or writing it down and sharing with you. So there are other ways to share than just that verbal communication. And then older children, like my middle schooler, things like, how can I support you going into middle school? Asking more broader questions. Maybe they're coming home and you're looking at them and feeling like maybe it was a hard day for them, just asking the question, was today a difficult day for you? Or, what happened at school today? Leading your child to be able to open up also starts with kind of that trust, so building that with your child and knowing that what they're saying to you or what they're showing you, sometimes it comes out in behavior. That it's really important as a caretaker or a parent to really just validate what they're saying to you or what they're showing you. So I think that trust, and then asking those questions and knowing and noticing where they are, what their age is, what do they already know about emotions and feelings. You're not going to ask all the same kids the same types of questions. So I hope that's helpful in kind of how do we scaffold those for our different age groups and just the uniquenesses of our children, wherever they might be.
I love that. And I like that you brought up the vocabulary, and mentioning that not like kids don't automatically have all of that knowledge and vocabulary, and it's part of our job as parents and educators to help them build that up through time, just like we do for school subjects.
Absolutely. And in the journal that I created, I do have words to grow on. And so under angry, I mean, there are so many words that are more granular, more specific. And if we have the ability as adults, right, to understand kind of what these other words are, what these other, these slight differences in feelings, but they make a big deal in the long run, right? So the difference of, feeling happy or feeling grateful, like you might feel this feeling inside, or you might show it on your face, but there's a difference between feeling happy and feeling grateful, right? So, or feeling calm or feeling peaceful, right? So just knowing those differences and being able to express yourself. And we as adults, right, we need to practice these things. There are so many different feelings to feel. I mean, and different cultures have different feelings that we may not also know about, right? I mean, around the world, there are words that we don't have in English that there are in other languages. And so, I mean, they say there's like 34,000 different emotions that we can feel. I mean,
What?
I could not nearly name them, but I mean, you look at these emotion wheels out there and they're just like, wow. I mean, there are words that I even need to look up. It's like, what exactly does that mean? But teaching ourselves as adults and then being able to teach those emotion words and that vocabulary totally helps our children label how they're feeling, which is such an important piece on getting themselves to understand and getting those caretakers and teachers and our tutors and whoever we're with to support us. Because if we don't know how our children are feeling, then how do we best support them? So getting those feelings out and being able to express them with the right words is an important life skill in your work job and in your parenting skills. I mean, we have to practice all the time. And so it's important that we start teaching those to our children from a young age.
Yeah. And so when we're talking about these feelings with our kids, and maybe a big feeling comes up, like you said, with going back to school and worry, maybe we have a worrier that's really worried about something about going back to school. How do we help our kids work through those emotions when they come up?
So I think there's a few things that we can do. And like I said, I think the first thing is like communicating. Like I said, whether it's verbal communication, nonverbal communication, some way, somehow, that communication needs to be opened up with our children. And once we can see that there might be some difficult feelings, it's important to validate that you understand how your child is feeling, what they're telling you. And then we move on to like, okay, now how can we help our child regulate what this is going to feel like or how they're feeling right now? So let's just start with separation anxiety. And the reason I'm starting with that is because a lot of our children, many of our children, are going to be going back into buildings at some point, whether it's now or down the road from now. They're going to leave us, and they've been with us for a long time, no matter what age your child is. So what could you do? You could start leaving them with a trusted adult now. Give it a try. Do a short time, right? You can read books. My favorite is The Kissing Hand by Audrey Penn. I mean, I used it in kindergarten all the time, but they come up with a way to say goodbye to each other. They have their little kissing hand, so come up with a goodbye routine. Read stories, find things that are going to help, that discussion a little bit bigger with your child, and know that it is normal. It is okay. They're going to feel that. And that is something that we could all feel at some point, right? And so letting them know that it's normal and that they're not going to be the only one feeling that way when they go off to school, and letting them feel those emotions. That doesn't mean that you go grab them and pick them up and then now they don't go to school, right? We need to follow through and we need to keep, but it's really important that we find ways to help with that. And then when we're talking about older students, I have a really good friend that is a middle school teacher, and, she talks about lunch being like the most, it's the most unstructured time. And it seems to be the most worrisome time for our middle schoolers and probably our high schoolers as well. So start talking through, what are you going to do when you get to the lunchroom, or if you're eating outside, picnic style, with all of this going on with COVID. I know we have some backup plans at our schools for that. So, what is that going to look like? How do you find someone? Maybe you don't know anyone at your new school. So just really communicating and being proactive. What could you do now to set them up for the best success that you can? And it doesn't mean that day one, they're going to find the perfect spot to sit for lunch and they're going to feel fantastic about it. They may be worried about it for some time, but eventually they're going to find it, their right spot, their place, and find comfort, but it may take time. And so just talking through those things are so, so important.
I love everything you said, and especially about figuring out with your child, what can we do now to help with this situation? And I mean, what a great skill for adulthood as well, because we all need that. We all need to have that foresight when we're having big emotions to say, what can I do about this right now? What can I not fix about this right now? And then just having faith that moving forward, it will eventually get better, even if it doesn't right now. And so when we're thinking about adulthood, we as adults have big emotions, and as parents especially, and for back to school. And I know a lot of people right now are having unique emotions with all the things that are going on. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. So how should we be talking about our own emotions to our kids? I know that there's an appropriate and an inappropriate way to do this, but I'd like to get your insight.
So what I would say is we are all feeling a huge range, right? Like maybe you're feeling some excitement about school starting and you're feeling some like big worries, maybe you're feeling some anxiety about your child going back to school or whatever it may be, a new activity that they're going to go into or whatever it is. I think it's important that we talk through how we're feeling, but we don't need to scare our children, right? So it depends on our children's age again, right? So if you have older children, you can address these subjects in a different way than you can with your younger children, right? So pointing older children to trusted news sources, pointing them to their school websites, have them read the pamphlets. What is going to happen at school this year? How is it going to look? So I think having those, conversations with your children are really important, no matter what age they are. Our young kiddos, school's going to look different. Here are the things that are going to happen. Talk them through, have a family discussion about what it's going to look like. What are the changes they're going to see? What are the things they need to know? How do you use the bathroom at school this year? I know at my kiddo school, it was like tap the red button. That means someone's in the restroom, and wash up and tap it on the way out so that they know someone's in the restroom, right? So learning some new routines, that's really important. But what I want to say to our parents and caretakers is this: keeping a positive outlook on what this year ahead is going to look like for our children, I think is a really important thing, because I feel like if we can project that positivity to our children, it will feel less scary and less worrisome to them. And even though there might be things to worry about, right? Because we're feeling worried, and maybe not everybody is, but there may be things you are worried about. It's also okay to express that and tell your child, but I would not overdo it. I would not get into a scenario where now we are scaring our young children into going. If you want your child to be going in person, then we want to be positive about what that's going to be like. Our mitigations are in place. Here is, but if we're now talking about just anything in general, we are the best example for our children. So when I am feeling frustrated about something, I tell my children, like, I am feeling frustrated right now, so I am going to walk away. So not only do we want to make sure that we're also labeling and showing our children how do we regulate our emotions when we're feeling a certain way. So I am now practicing and I am promoting when you are frustrated to walk away or breathe or whatever it is. We are their best teachers, right? So the adults in the lives of children need to express themselves in the way that we want to see our children do it. So when your child is having a 10 on the emotion scale and they are out of control for whatever reason, the behavior is coming out, the emotions are super high, remember that is not the time to teach them what to do. We need to teach them when emotions are regulated and we are at a space where we can listen and we can practice. So don't try and do these things when our children are super heightened. Just like us as adults, we are not going to be able to reason or talk to our children if we are super heightened as well, because that only ends up being a battle that we could avoid if we can regulate. And that takes a lot of strength. Parents and caretakers, even someone like us who know, a lot about this, like I can tell you with my 9 and 11-year-old, we have our moments and I am not perfect at this either, right? So just we're human and we only can be, pushed so far in our emotions where I lose control too. But the best example is what we can show our children at home. And it's just really important that we do let them know how we're feeling. And please use the positive, like those great feelings too. Let them know. Like sometimes you can feel nervous and stressed about something, but like in a good way. Like feel nervous and stressed, as I'm sure you do in your program, talk about feeling that for a test, right? But that's probably only going to make us want to study more, right? It's okay. It's okay to feel that way. So again, practicing being the example and try not to try and help co-regulate your child's emotions while they're like super heightened. We need to help get down first, then we can teach. You can't really teach the child when they're super heightened. So that's a really important piece too.
That's great. And so when everyone's in that, we're calm, we're receptive, um, our lizard brain is not doing its lizard brain things. And we're trying to teach our kids about social emotional intelligence and help them as they go into the classroom where we're not there with them. Do you have any favorite tools or like tricks or anything like that you love teaching kids that you think we should know about?
So I would say part of learning this is also making it fun for our kids. So, I mean, I created these little dolls and I have parents tell me that they carry them around in their backpacks and kiddos are, carrying their, playing, like doing role play with them and make believe and, so teaching through play, I think is super important for our kids. And also using books, like I said, and art, like those are things that we can, again, as we talked about before, kind of building that trust and building the lines of communication with our children, because you may have kiddos that aren't ready to open up and they don't want to, or again, they don't know how to. So really using play, I think, to teach those pieces is really important. And just being really explicit too, right? So besides being the example for our children, as you said, when we are at a place where we're not having, our heightened emotions, whether it's an excitement or an anger, right? Um, Also, again, I created a journal for being able to write about or draw about, how we are feeling. So using a journal or a notebook or just a special place where your kiddo can draw or write about the fantastic feelings that they're having. Like maybe they had like a super fabulous day and they're feeling, some excitement about how they performed in gymnastics or on the baseball field or whatever it is. So I think just using what your child loves already, whether, like I said, play, art, games, opening conversations while you're building with your child. Those are always good times to connect, to communicate, and kind of teach those skills. And also, like I said, being the example. So saying it when you're feeling it and saying that you're feeling grateful. I talk about with my kids all the time, how I'm feeling today. And it's not just, how you doing? Oh, I'm fine, And a lot of us do say that because we're just moving on with our day. But maybe try and practice like giving a real vocabulary word about feelings, I'm feeling thrilled. Oh, because, and tell them why. So just practicing that is so good. And then as we were talking about that regulation, there's something called co-regulation, which I mentioned, know what your child likes. Some kids love the hug and some don't. And some kids love to sit and draw and some don't. Some love music. So kind of, we've made a list, both of my children, on what it is that they can do when they're feeling their heightened emotions. So I then can remind them, remember, you really like going to put on symphony music in your room. Like this is a good time for that. So make a list with your kiddos. Like that is such a great thing to do when they're, in not in those heightened emotions, but a great way to even start that conversation now with them. Like, let's talk about when you're feeling these feelings, what are things that you like to do? And then when those feelings and things come up, those are good reminder times for your kiddo when they are feeling good enough to then, go draw a picture, build with blocks, turn on music, whatever it is.
I love that. And so helpful for kids in that moment too, because that's not the moment where we think up exactly what is best for us in that moment.
I'm all about lists and I'm all about those kind of like, whether it be our routines, like those are things you could do now, like making those checklists of what does it look like to walk in from school? you put your mask, to the laundry, or you throw it in the trash if it's a what are the things I do when I walk in? Also making a list for the routine in the morning before getting out the door, making a list of how can I problem solve? How do I enjoy to regulate my emotions? What are things I could do? So I'm all about lists for everything.
Me too. It must be an educator thing.
Right?
Because
Yes.
I'm all about the lists.
Yes. And if your child's not reading, as we know, put a picture with the words next to it, then they're gonna, associate them and learn. It's so good. I mean, how many of us use a grocery list? We use a list of our to-dos. We have lists of our, calendar. Maybe it's on your phone or whatever, These are all really, really important strategies that I'm sure in your practice too, you're using all the time with kiddos.
Yeah.
It's important. It
Yeah.
also builds that trust, right? There is no question. My brain is not trying to figure out what to do, where to go, but it's right here, So
Right.
those are
And I challenge you to walk into any kindergarten classroom and not spot the schedule with pictures somewhere in the room, because
100.
kids are
Yeah,
constantly wondering, what are
yeah,
we doing that? And that takes up a lot of brain space.
for sure. Totally does. They always want to know, okay, well, after music class, we're going to lunch. It's so good for them. And sometimes, though, I throw in the random question mark because it's also good for the curveball, right?
Right.
I don't know what's happening after lunch today. We'll have to see,
Well, and
So
it's good. I was listening to a podcast the other day about how that actually builds executive function when we're used to things going in an order, but then sometimes it goes out of order and we have to know how to regulate ourselves during that
Oh,
period.
totally. I mean, how many of us can say we have children that one thing throwing them off might actually really throw them in for a serious loop, and their emotions will show it, and maybe their behavior will come out. So getting them used to that routine breaking a little is also a good practice.
Yeah, and hard too.
It
But
is. It is.
Marcelle, thank you so much for giving us all of these great tips.
Thanks for having
Would
me.
would you mind telling us about how we can find your journals and your dolls and how we can find you online?
Absolutely. So again, this is the Feelings Journal. So it's a nice full color, lots of pages in here, lots of fun things for kiddos to do related to feelings. And then the doll sets as well. So the website is myfeellinks.com, and feel links is spelled feel and links, and it's one word. So 2 L's in the middle, because it's all about linking to our feelings, and it's all about our own feelings, which is great. And then for anyone out there in education or healthcare at all, I always extend a 10% discount. So if you are, it's best to send me a message through my website. I also have Facebook and Instagram. I'm also on Twitter. So those are all at My Feellinks. And yeah, so I'm so excited to be seeing this in the hands of so many kiddos and families, and just knowing that we are educating, about why this is so important and why we may not have grown up this way, but it's so important. We know now from the scientific research that our feelings are so important to, being able to know ourselves, empathize with others, build our social skills. And I really hope that whatever tools you use out there, that you are focusing on these things at home and in the classrooms. So thank you.
You're doing amazing work and it's definitely needed. And like you said, even if we didn't grow up this way exactly, our kids can really benefit from it. So I am going to link all of Marcelle's stuff in the comments or in the description if you're watching this later. If you thought this video was helpful, and you enjoyed it, please share it with someone that you know that would enjoy it too, because that is how we get the word out about these videos, about the amazing guests that we have, is when you care enough to share the video with someone else. So go ahead and share it, or comment down below the thing that you liked the best. And I will see you next week for our next live. And in the meantime, I hope you have the best weekend that you can.
Thank you.